Okay, let's continue our special focus on Budget 2026. Jayant Sinha, former MOS Finance, is with me here in the studios. He's also former Chairperson, Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance. Rajiv Memani, President, CII. Naina Lal Kidwai, she's former President, FICCI. And Siddharth Zarabi, Group Editor, Business Today. Sumant Sinha, Founder, Chairman, Renew, is also with us. I appreciate all of you joining us. I want to come to you, Jayant Sinha, first, because leading up to the budget, there were presumably twin objectives, growth and stability. One would say this government has done very well on ensuring macroeconomic stability in tough times. Growth is where there are concerns, particularly with private investment, particularly with manufacturing. Your response, does this budget do enough to really trigger the growth engine?
Good evening, Rajdeep, and let's first understand that stability, in fact, is a precursor to growth. And the fact that our macroeconomic parameters are as stable as they are with good growth, low inflation, fiscal deficit coming down, that's a great foundation for growth. But in this budget, there are three major growth drivers that we need to pay attention to. First and foremost, of course, is infrastructure. We've obviously been spending quite a bit on infrastructure in the past, and now with 12.2 lakh crores, high-speed rail, university townships, spending on roads, all of that infrastructure really will enable us to drive growth, make us more competitive, and add a lot of jobs in infrastructure. The second area that is going to be a major growth driver for us are the sunrise sectors of semiconductors, artificial intelligence, biopharma. In all of these different areas, massive allocations have been made. 40,000 crores for semiconductors alone. We've got, of course, for data centers, a tax exemption. That also is going to attract a lot of investment in this area. So these sunrise sectors are going to benefit greatly. And third, while you might not want to think of defense necessarily from a growth point of view, I'll highlight the fact that we are increasing our defense budget by 20% from 5 lakh crores to 6 lakh crores is a massive growth boost as well, because much of that is going to be manufactured here in India, much of that is going to be done through our MSMEs, and much of that is going to result in new research and development, new technologies that are necessary for national security. So, for example, drones. So if you look at these three big growth drivers, each one of them has got a massive boost. And of course, it's going to really help us continue to grow at 7% plus over the next few years. So I think the growth part is absolutely there.
You're saying the growth path is there, but as we've seen, we've simply not been, let's say, as competitive as the Chinese. And we are looking at export-led growth in tough times, signing FTAs. But the truth of the matter is, unless you get ease of doing business in place or speed of doing business in place, it's just not enough during a budget, Mr. Sinha, to make these announcements. The question is, between intent is right, where does the execution come in?
So China is a formidable competitor, and not necessarily because they follow a level playing field strategy. We know that they followed a mercantilist strategy. They've kept their currency at a certain level. They've been able to subsidize a lot of their companies and so on. So it's been difficult for all countries around the world to compete with China. But the important steps that we have been taking over the last few years, and particularly in this budget, through PLIs, through subsidies in certain areas, through tax exemptions, and importantly in infrastructure, is going to make a very big difference. And I'll come to one final point here, Rajdeep, as well, which is that we are very fortunate to be able to have a very significant build-out of our renewable sector. And as we build out our renewable sector, we are finding out that we now have among the lowest energy prices on the planet, because the round-the-clock solar pricing that we're getting with storage and so on is also going to allow us to reduce energy costs and make us a lot more competitive. That plus the money that's being spent on railways and roads and logistics, I think is going to enable us on a level playing field basis, of course, to compete effectively with China, and not just China, Rajdeep, but with Vietnam and other manufacturing powerhouses as well.
Okay, let me take that. Since you've given us your perspective, I want to take it to those who actually run companies or are in industry, and I want to ask them that question to each of you. Rajiv Memani, President CII, to you first. Given the fact, as Mr. Sinha points out, that there are incentives in this budget for specific sectors, will the animal spirits of the economy really get triggered? Because the government says that they've done lots for corporate India, starting with corporate tax relief 6 years ago. And yet the truth of the matter is, when you look at the numbers, private investment is still less than what it was in 2019, pre-COVID.
No, Rajdeep, I'm not sure whether your numbers on private sector investment being less than 2019 is accurate.
As a
ICICI
percentage, it is.
ICICI Securities did a review of all listed companies, non-banking listed companies, end of 2025. We had the highest capex by private sector in 2025, which was almost 11 trillion rupees, 11 lakh crores, which was 20% growth over last year. This year, yes, for the first 2 quarters, the growth had slowed down because what was happening around the world, the tariff situation in India and others, I think people withheld their capex plans. But if you look at what happened in the last quarter and in the third quarter, we suddenly saw as compared to third quarter growth last year, the project announcements were up by 18 to 20%. And I'm sure the momentum is growing. So I don't think I have been listening to this narrative since morning that private sector is not investing. It's not true that private sector is not investing. You look at balance sheets of companies that you know of, and you can look at their balance sheets and see how much they've been investing. You look at newspaper announcements every day. So first is that. Secondly, can we grow more? Of course, we can grow more. India is growing, economy is growing, balance sheets are strong. Can we grow more? Definitely, we can grow more. I think there are lots of reforms that have happened on ease of doing business, on making India more competitive through factory production. A lot of new sectors which were not there till 3 4 years back or 2 3 years back opening up. I think we're seeing a lot of that happening. That will definitely speed up the capex, which hopefully we should give greater growth
Right.
private sector capex growth in India. And thirdly, I think Jayant laid it out. I think there is enough ammunition in this budget to feed on growth. And I think one thing which I must say, this budget has done very well because you also please understand if you have to maintain macroeconomic balance for India. Last year our tax revenues were as compared to the budgeted estimates were down by almost 1.5 lakh crores. But in spite of that, we almost maintained the same capex trajectory. So there were lots of. So if you're looking at going forward, they have assumed a 8% growth of tax revenues for next year. So there is limited amount that the government can also spend. In spite of that, I think they've increased the projection of from 11.2 to 12.2 lakh crores. And more importantly, the initiatives that they have taken, for example, whether it is data centers, where large investments are coming, nuclear power, where large investments will be coming. They've said they've given full customs duty relief. On MROs, they've provided the relief, so it becomes more attractive for people to set up MROs. On rare earth and minerals, they provided the customs duty relief, which is there. So if you look at sector by sector, without spending too much, the
Right.
nudge to bring in private investment is definitely there in the budget. Yeah, and you're
Let me
absolutely
bring
right.
in Suman. Let me bring
Yeah.
in Suman Sinha at this point because you're in a sector, renewables, which many believe is one of those sectors which is seen as sunrise, where the government has made a genuine effort to encourage renewable energy sector. Your response. Do you believe it's enough? Rajiv Memani says that look, it's unfair to target private sector, but the growth has been uneven. Let's put it this way. Some sectors certainly have pushed ahead, others have stayed back. And we've seen this sort of W shape since COVID. Your reaction? Do you believe this budget has provided the growth momentum? It's focused on stability, but has it provided the growth momentum?
Look, I think that you can't just look at the budget in itself and conclude from there whether the government is doing adequately on providing growth stimulus. I think you have to look at what the government does across the whole year. And as somebody said in one of the conversations earlier this morning, that if GST had been part of this budget, all of us would have been saying that the GST, the whole budget is very reformist, but it was done earlier, and so therefore it wasn't part of this budget. So I think you have to look at the whole series of things that the government is doing. I think that there are many sectors, and I think the government has certainly picked on capex, for example, infrastructure as being one of the big areas that it wants to get into and push hard. They have ramped up expenditure in infrastructure very significantly over the years and continues to do so. I mean, keep in mind that our inflation rate right now is about 2 or 3%. So even a 10% increase is a significant jump over inflation and in real terms. And then on defense, I think that's another sector where the government, obviously for geopolitical reasons and otherwise, is also investing a large amount of
Right.
money. So
Naina
I
Lal
think if you look
Kidwai,
at it across different
your
sectors,
view, you see, the one criticism that we are hearing since the budget is, could more have been done? I was speaking to someone, a foreign investor, he said this was not a breakthrough budget as they had hoped. My reaction was, it's tough in the tough times that we live with, all the geopolitical risks, to suddenly have a breakthrough budget. His view was adversity should have been turned into greater opportunity.
I think that it's easy to say that, but the reality is that
Let me get Naina in that. Let me bring in Naina, because we have limited time. Go ahead, Naina.
So yes,
You're,
we need the private sector to come in with more capital expenditure. I'm with Rajiv in saying that there's some happening, but is it enough? Clearly, the government doesn't believe so. And the sweet spot there typically is when capacity utilization goes north of 80%, which in many sectors it has not yet reached. So I'd like to come at it from the other side, which is what attracts industry to make that investment, and demand has to be a key part of it. Domestic demand and exports, both of those then ensure that capacity utilizations go up, and as capacity utilizations go up, the investment into those sectors then begins to happen. How will capacity utilization go up? I think there are a couple of indications there. If you look at the fiscal deficit glide path, it's actually quite soft while adhering to what had been promised. It's a 0.1% improvement or drop from where the 4.4 is what we believe would be achieved by this March, and the promise is at 4.3. So it's not so high as to remove incentive and liquidities in the system. While maintaining that glide path, capital expenditure from the government side going up, which improves logistic costs. There's very high capital allocations down to the states. And all of this, again, helps make industry attractive enough to look at that CapEx cycle. How does domestic demand go up? There are a number of measures on job creation across sectors.
right.
We heard for healthcare, tourism, which is a big one, which will provide, again, employment. And as much money as we put into people's hands, that in turn translates to consumption, demand, and therefore capex. So the job creation, job employment, high deployment into sectors which are labor intensive is, I think, a key aspect of the budget which we should not ignore. On the capital side of the budget, I think one of the things that Jen touched on, but I want to build on, is the urban infrastructure, and the fact that the desire now is to look at urban infrastructure through cluster development of what are really going to be tier 2, tier 3 cities, and the creation of an active municipal bond market which enables the financing of these cities, the connectivity between cities by these rail corridors. So the concept of urban development getting a sort of renewed attention
I've just got a minute. I take your point. Conceptually, in terms of intent, the government is pressing the right button. But Siddharth Zarabi, we've seen intent has to translate to execution. Smart cities is a good example. The track record is a mixed one. The government presses the right buttons, but states will have to respond. You earlier today told us about the 16th Finance Commission and its recommendations. A lot of the heavy lifting has been done by the center so far. It's going to now translate to states, to private industry as well. Do you believe that this budget has set the right direction? Now the question is execution, or the challenge is execution.
Rajdeep, let me take the example of the very ambitious expansion as far as the high-speed corridors are concerned. I put that very same question to I&B Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, who is also the Railways Minister, just a little while ago. What are the numbers? 7 high-speed corridors, because all attention has been focused on Mumbai and Ahmedabad, and these are in the southern states. And therefore, no one can raise any politics around it. They have been given to states which are not necessarily ruled by the Bharatiya Janata Party. 16 lakh crore of investment, 4,000 kilometer of world-class high-speed, what may be called a bullet train corridor. Why did the Bombay and Ahmedabad one get delayed? Purely politics. We know that the Shiv Sena, as it was existing then, delayed it. Cost overruns went up from 1 lakh crore, that project went up to 2 lakh crore.
So very clearly, the intent on execution exists, but it is for the states themselves. And when I asked that question to Ashwini Vaishnav, that how will the states respond, he said they are all welcoming it. So a consensus that despite politics, you will let business and execution of ground level projects happen. And Rajdeep, if that project were to take off, it's probably a 10, 15, 20-year project. I'm telling you that the incremental impact on GDP growth will be phenomenal.
Okay, let me leave it there. As I said, it's only day one. The devil often in the budget lies in the detail. The instant reaction of the markets clearly was linked to the hike in securities transaction tax. But we will wait and see how all of this plays out in specific sectors in particular. This was the sector-driven budget, if you want to call it that. Some called Nirmala Sitharaman today Tinker Raman, others said Focused Raman. You can choose whichever side you are in that. She was focused on specific sectors. Others said she tinkered too much with the budget. Let's leave it there. I appreciate my guest joining us.